You may have heard of Gaia. It's a streaming service similar to something like Netflix or Nebula, except that it has a very specific type of content that it targets to a very specific audience. In general, most of their videos have something to do with spirituality, pseudoscience, all kinds of strange conspiracy theories, and really they push the limit further than any such channel I've ever seen on YouTube. Of course, the YouTube page and Facebook page behind Gaia are really only used in order to try and lure people in to their website where they can subscribe to the Gaia streaming service, which, by the way, is not cheap. Once they have you on their streaming service, that's when they can target you with whatever pseudoscientific garbage is most likely to convince you that they know what they're talking about. And it all works under this basic principle that if you present a single ridiculous idea to somebody, you're instantly going to get called out for it because people love to prove people wrong these days. However, if you wrap that simple lie in a bunch of other lies, a bunch of other ridiculous claims, and all of them build off of one another and require you to assume one of them to be true for the next one to be true, that's how you build this structure of lies that people don't always recognize as false. And I think the reason they're so successful is that they market themselves as an informative educational YouTube channel or an educational streaming service. And in fact, it's not just going to educate you, it's going to educate you on all those things that nobody else really wants to talk about and nobody else wants to tell you the truth about. So people signing up for Gaia are already kind of predisposed to the idea that other people are going to be like, oh, this is ridiculous, this doesn't make any sense. So today, we're just going to keep it simple. We're just going to look at just one of their videos and see if we can wrap our heads around the ideas that they put on the table. I found a video that I think is actually perfect for this. It's called Evidence a Race of Giants Once Inhabited Earth. You know, we're not 10 seconds into this video and we already have our first manner of deception. Yes, Abraham Lincoln did say that the eyes of that species of extinct giants have gazed on Niagara, but what you would know if you read literally the sentence that comes after this one in his quote is that he's talking about mammoths and mastodons. Yes, he's talking about giants that once roamed the earth, but not human or humanoid giants. He's talking about the beasts that used to live there. This quote comes from when he visited Niagara and was so blown away by the sheer prospect that only a few years ago, there were these mountainous creatures roaming the earth right there, looking at that exact same spectacle that he got to see, and now they're all extinct. That's all he's saying. He's not talking about giants. As it turns out, Abraham Lincoln didn't believe your ridiculous conspiracy theory. Sorry.
In the late summer of 1908, Collinsville, Illinois, near the Cahokia mounds, construction workers accidentally unearthed a stone tomb that contained several giant bodies, each measuring over 7 feet tall. Following this discovery, the bodies quickly disappeared, only to add more mystery to the idea that a large species of humans once inhabited the Americas.
Well, isn't that awfully inconvenient for you? That you had physical evidence of these giants. You had their actual remains, and now they've mysteriously disappeared. Very strange, very strange. We'll get back to that, though.
What is left of this mysterious mound complex still baffles archaeologists today. Cahokia was considered the largest city north of Mexico, with a population between 25,000 and 50,000 in 1000 AD. This Native American civilization had an advanced system of waterways, agriculture, and textiles, and also many legends of what they referred to as the mound builders. Who were these mound builders?
I don't know. Maybe the inhabitants of the incredibly complex and sophisticated city that you just mentioned. I I don't understand. I don't understand where this leap comes from. Where does this connection come from? Where you're suddenly speculating at who built these mounds? Like, we're literally talking about a massive urban city, right? Like, sure, this is happening in ancient times, but they built houses, they built waterways. They were an extremely sophisticated people. Cahokia was not just some dirt mud village out in the desert.
Because these mounds are built up from the earth itself in the shape of snakes and other various creatures, and some are just mounds. But the thing that's really interesting is when you look around the world, you also find they have something called dolmens. Dolmens are just these massive stones put together to let you know as a marker that there's a giant buried here. There's somebody of royalty buried here.
It's kind of reminiscent of the way that you would tell a child that a little stack of rocks that they find next to a river was put there by a fairy, and if you see little stacks of rocks, it means there was a fairy nearby.
So the thing that really binds them together is the fact that they're both these massive monuments to people that may have been very, very spiritual to them in the ancient past.
I'm not trying to dismiss that, okay? I'm not trying to say that these people didn't draw spirituality from these structures. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of the question at hand, which is, did giants used to rule the earth? And it seems like Gaia is trying very hard to talk about literally anything else. You'll notice that Gaia does this quite a lot. They like to toe the line and kind of dance around the subject a little bit, but they have absolutely no problem with their followers and their viewers just plunging headfirst into this stuff. You'll see that the comments under their videos that are hearted or pinned are the comments of people basically saying, "When I was 6 years old, I was abducted by aliens," or "My dad was a half giant, I swear it's true." You know, because it pushes their narrative and they don't have to take any of the responsibility of saying something so ridiculous. And it just goes to show that their biggest goal at the end of the day is always going to be that as many people as possible believe this stuff. They don't care about much else. They definitely care about money. They definitely care about growing their audience, but all of that ties together with people being deceived, as many of them as possible.
In my research, there's over 1,500 newspaper articles that all span from the early 1900s, late 1800s of non-stop discoveries of giant bones in mounds, some of them not in mounds. When you look at some of the writings of the earliest explorers in North America, and most of their journals, they describe the chiefs of each tribe as being a giant. Some of them 12 to 15 feet tall.
Look, there's no way to debunk this because they don't provide sources for anything. I don't know where the hell they got this information. So I have absolutely no way of figuring out whether or not that they interpreted it correctly. Based on the way that they interpreted the quote at the beginning of the video, I think it's totally fair to assume that there are other ways that you could interpret whatever led them to thinking that this was the case. You know, let's say it's completely true. Let's say records say or show that some of the Native American leaders were bigger than the rest of the population of the tribe. I can think of so many reasons why that might be the case that I would look at before jumping to the conclusion that giants are real.
That story right there, you can take that and place it in 100 different areas all around the world, and it's the exact same story. That's what's amazing about it.
Gaia is a platform that breeds the type of person that will always look for the largest leap, the one that's the most mystical, the most magnificent. They want a story. They don't really care about the truth. And what's ironic about it is in a lot of these cases, like in the city that we just looked at, it's genuinely fascinating what these cultures did and what they had to show for themselves. And we don't need to attribute all this mumbo jumbo to it in order to make it an interesting story. And by doing that, you're just taking away from the real story that's behind all of this, the real people who are involved in all of this. It's a common theme. I see it everywhere with this pseudoscience stuff, right? Flat earthers think that astronomers are just complete clowns who don't know what the hell they're doing. And it sucks, because I think that the people who go into things like astronomy, or in this case, people who go into things like anthropology, are so fascinated by this stuff and work very, very hard to make sure that as many people in the world know the truth about our history as possible. And these people just go, screw them, screw everything they stand for. I have a theory.
When you look at that happening in North America, and then you look at the logs of the very first ship that landed on Easter Island, and what was the first thing they said? There was a race of giants there, and the race of giants were the priestly class of the Rapa Nui people, and that they were overseeing the construction of those stone heads.
No, that is not what happened. You made that up. This isn't even one of those cases where it ties into reality a little bit and so you can speculate. No, the whole story of Easter Island is that we don't have a written account of the first explorers who arrived on it. We don't know what happened. And that's the thing. That's what they love. They love these little gaps where they can fill in any ambiguity about our history and our past with their own weird, far out theories. But what really pisses me off is the fact that he says that if you look in the log, the first thing they say was, there were giants here. They didn't say that. There is no log. What? Can someone come get this guy?
Another strange piece of evidence that might add credence to this mythology is that there are over 100 large human-looking mysterious footprints preserved in stone for thousands of years all over the world. Is this possible physical proof of these legends?
Look, they're not evidence for anything, okay? The reason we believe in dinosaurs isn't because there's some footprint from a stegosaurus somewhere in the middle of the rainforest, right? We have a lot of collaborating evidence that all from different scientists, from different fields of science, all adds up together to paint a picture for us about what it was like in prehistoric times. A footprint on its own, even one left by an actual dinosaur, would likely not be even close to enough to get some sort of scientific consensus on the idea that they existed. You need people to back it up from different perspectives, because it's very easy in science to get tunnel vision and to focus on your theory, on your project, and think that this is the life-changing, world-changing thing that you thought it was when you first set eyes upon it. But a true skeptic, a true scientist would look at this and begin their investigation, not conclude it.
For example, you have the Bible. Just start at the Bible. In the beginning, the first book of Moses, 2 times some giants are mentioned. Everyone remembers the fight between David and Goliath. Goliath was a giant. This is a Bible story. The book of Eskimo, which is the mythology of the Eskimo, simply phrases at that time the giants were living on earth. The same thing in Egypt. They are clearly talking in the so-called pyramid text that some of the gods were giants compared to humans.
Okay, he's not making the fundamentalist argument that because it's in the Bible, and the Bible is a historical account of the origin of the world, that means that it's true. What he's saying is that because we can find mentions of giants in scripture from all across the world, in cultures from all across the world, at different times, that tells us that there's probably something being documented rather than something being made up. And I'd say in most cases, that's actually true. However, what's really important to keep in mind is that the idea of giants isn't that far-fetched. It's basically just a humanoid, but bigger. It's not particularly surprising that we find various cultures capable of coming to that same idea of a human who's bigger. And plus, let's not pretend like all of the depictions of giants that this guy is talking about are all equal. You know, by the logic that these guys are using, then technically any larger than life or even smaller than life depiction of a creature or anything like that is potential evidence of that creature really existing. So if you've ever had a little action figure or something like that, that's actually proof that tiny people used to roam the earth.
If this is true, how did all this evidence simply disappear?
Across the last 200 years, many hundreds of oversized skeletons have been found in Native American mounds and also Native American cemeteries. All of these bones have now gone. Unfortunately, even though many of them were in the Smithsonian, they were repatriated the beginning of the 1990s as part of the NAGPRA law, the repatriation of Native American indigenous peoples' remains.
So this is the part where we start to go from harmless quackery to truly offensive garbage. NAGPRA is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. And in general, this story is pretty sad. It's thanks to NAGPRA that Native Americans were able to get back the remains that were essentially stolen from under their noses. To dismiss that story and the real pain and suffering behind those people and just sort of conflate it with your own narrative about giants and conspiracies, it's pretty frustrating, and I see it quite a lot, that these conspiracies, because they're tapping into moments in history or different cultures, they're often extremely dismissive of what actually happened during those times.
Is it possible that traces of their lineage can still be found today, but hidden within the very fabric of humanity?
When we ask ourselves a question about direct genetic evidence linking us to giants, the giants of the past, to the best of my knowledge, that DNA evidence does not exist.
Did you just hear what I just heard? He literally said there's no evidence for it. There's none. Absolutely zero. Why are we here? What's the point of this video? Seriously, what is the point? And I know what he was gonna say. He was gonna go off on this long tangent about how there might not be physical evidence, but if we connect the dots of history, if we read between the lines, then it becomes evident, then it becomes clear that giants once roamed the earth. So with that, I'm just gonna end it here. This video does not deserve a single second more of our attention because it's back to front, just completely ridiculous. In the first 10 seconds of the video is when the deception starts. And when you're just some guy in your basement, you know, making videos about theories to things that you're not certain about, nobody's really going to lampoon you for that. They may criticize you, but they're not going to put you down just for trying. It's different though, when you have the whole organization at your fingertips, when you have all these researchers, when you have clearly the resources to make proper informative documentaries and instead choose to deceive and confuse people. We'll look at more of these videos in the coming weeks, but I wanted to start with this one because I think it's relatively harmless, although it shows very well the different practices that Gaia uses to try and convince you of things that could not possibly be true. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a like and a comment down below. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like it, and let me know if there's any quackery or interesting hoaxes that you'd like me to look into next.